So a few years ago, I got to have this life-changing meal in Morocco. I was hiking with a cousin and a friend, and we got pretty lost. And we ran into this guy who was taking his donkey to a watering hole. He invited us over to his place. We didn't know him, so we were hesitant at first, but he managed to win us over. When we get to his house, he tries to feed us, and it's Ramadan, and so we know him and his family are trying to fast until the sun goes down. And we start to think, it would be really rude of us to accept to end up eating this guy's food in front of them when they can't have any. What ends up happening is he manages to entertain us for hours. And when the sun goes down and this family breaks their fast, the whole family comes out. In-laws, kids, everything. It was this big table. And it was a feast. The food was really good, but that's not the part I remember best. Never had I felt so genuinely welcomed and received by people who were complete strangers that morning. That was such a memorable and life-changing meal. I think that's one of those moments that always reminds me of, how many good people are out there. So I'm turning 30 this week, and I'm running down the 30 best things that I did before turning 30. These aren't necessarily in order. So I married my best friend. Deanna and I got engaged when we were 24, married when we were 25. 5 years goes by fast, but man, it's been good. We had Reese. I have always known I wanted to be a dad. I always thought that I would really enjoy it, and I was absolutely right about that. That said, having Reese took us a lot longer than we anticipated, and so one of the things I am most proud of is the fact that we did not give up during that year of trying. We came really close. We were super discouraged. I'd say that year, a year isn't that long by a lot of people's standards, but we had some health concerns and some other reasons to think that it might not happen for us ever. But we kept it up, and we have Reese as a result. I lived in a van to help the people of North Korea. It's kind of a long story, but basically I took an internship with this organization called Liberty in North Korea. Their whole thing is helping rescue and resettle North Korean refugees and working with them to build a different future for the people who are still in North Korea. I lived in this van for 3 or 4 months, drove around the Midwest talking to schools, churches. Along the way I just met so many incredible people who were doing great work in their own community. They hosted us. I met many lifelong friends through this organization. Absolutely thankful I did that.
We're in Colorado! Woo! We're in Iowa, Kansas.
We're in a corn maze. We are here inside the Milwaukee Public Market.
We're in the Alamo.
I also got to serve some kids in South Africa. I volunteered at a care center for orphans and vulnerable children in Johannesburg. 1 year I came back to do my thesis work there. Look, it changed some ways I saw the world. Things like having a bit of a savior complex in my early 20s to realizing that it's way better to empower people to just play a role of a faithful supporter rather than trying to be the hero. I'm still learning this. I got to visit my grandma one last time. So she passed away 4 years ago, back in 2016. She lived to be 98. On her 96th birthday, I realized that I only had so many opportunities left to go see her. We lived in the same house growing up, but she had been living in the Philippines for a while, and I took Deanna to go see her. It was the same summer my wife and I got engaged, and I really wanted the two of them to meet. I knew we wouldn't have very many opportunities, and I ended up being right about that. But that encounter, that experience that summer was so, so sweet. I wrote a lot. I wrote blog posts, articles. I wrote this book. I developed better writing skills, better discipline, and learned how to use writing to process and express ideas. I kept doing what I love. What I mean by that is I've always had such a broad set of interests: photography, writing, traveling, international, humanitarian issues. I could not see how they would all go together in a career. But I'm glad I just kept room for each of them in my life, because I now have this role doing creative communications for an environmental nonprofit that more or less puts them all together. So yeah, if you've got a bunch of loves, a bunch of passions, even if you can't get paid for them, just find a way to keep doing them. I also started caring a lot about sustainability and the environment. I learned different choices I could make in my life that could improve the way I took care of the planet. I was never against any of it. I just used to think of it as one out of a lot of different good things to do. But the more I see how everybody's impacted, especially rural poor communities, many of which I ended up having the chance to meet in person, it really gave me the desire to do everything I can to take care of the health of the planet. I ran 2 half marathons, one in Eugene, one in San Diego. Never thought I would be the person who enjoyed running, but here we are, and I look forward to running more. I adopted this dog right here, Beignet. She is crazy, but she helps me not take life too seriously, and that's a valuable thing. I made some incredible friends, made a lot in school, made a lot at Link and internships after school. It's gotten harder to make new friends the older I get, especially real deep ties. But man, it's still so worth it to keep trying. Natuto ako ng 5 wika: Tagalog, Spanish, Hindi/Urdu, Italian, even French, just a little bit. Estoy lejos de ser perfecto en cada uno de ellos. Uje koe Hindi ya Urdu, nahin yadhe. Mais j'ai vraiment apprécié la capacité d'être multilingue. E ora posso comunicare con così tante altre persone in tutto il mondo. I lived in the Pacific Northwest. Long-time dream. Lived in Eugene, Oregon. I know for the stage of life I'm in right now, being in California, closer to family is better. But man, I wonder if we'll end up back there someday. I learned how to explore and how to appreciate the Enneagram. Yeah, I know in some circles it is a topic that has been loved to death, but it has been really valuable for me. I know I'm a 7, and so I've seen the strengths and for sure the weaknesses or the blind spots of being my personality type. If this is a foreign language to you, I won't explain it all here. Just look it up. It's a deep dive that's worth doing. I took a photo every day since the beginning of 2010. That's over a decade now. I've talked about this before, but talk about a life-enriching project. It's really just this whole gratitude thing for me, you know? I learned how to make really good beignets. Tell me which one you like better and tell me which one you think is mine.
I like this one better.
This one is okay?
And I think you made that one.
I actually made these.
What?
Yeah. I managed to save some money and to pay off our student loans. Probably not the most romantic item on this list, but maybe the most practical. I am so glad to not have to make monthly student loan payments anymore. I lived in Italy and in Argentina. Look, I love traveling, I love visiting places, but it's totally different to see a place for a few days versus being able to live there, to immerse yourself in the culture and see what everyday life, everyday activities. In Italy, Argentina, they have such complementary cultures. I'm glad to have spent time in both of them. I've kept up some international friendships, and I'm really glad I have. Friends in Korea, in England, Norway. These are harder to keep up, but they're so worth it. I read a lot of books. I'm a pretty voracious reader, but I've learned how to be more selective, and I'm really excited about several of my life-changing favorites that have found their way to me. I traveled, and I spent 2, maybe 3 years really making travel a top priority. I found ways to travel on a very shoestring budget, taking advantage of a time in my life where I had lots of time to spend out of the country, and I went to many places. Thailand, Germany, Japan, Amsterdam, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Taiwan. I got to visit some post-conflict zones. I've spent time in a refugee camp in Thailand talking to people who escaped fighting in Myanmar. Spent time in a rural community in Colombia talking to people on both sides of this nasty civil war, guerrilla war situation. I've learned that reconciliation and forgiveness is so difficult and so not easy, but it's possible. And when you hear somebody forgive someone who's just done horrible things to their family, it changes what you think is possible for the world. I got to launch a podcast, and it's one I'm proud of and excited to work on. It's called Grassroots, and we're taking this topic of the environment, of sustainability, but we're focusing the conversation on the people who are the most affected. Rural communities in underdeveloped countries that struggle with poverty. They don't get much of the spotlight, but they really should, because they're kind of the front lines of climate change. I discovered Ignatian Spirituality. I learned practices like contemplative prayer and mindful meditation. Look, this video is too short for me to properly do that topic justice, but basically, I've let my faith evolve from just, trying to believe all the right things to actually practicing prayer that's oriented around listening and trying to find God in all things, not just the explicitly religious stuff. I got to attend a music festival I really enjoyed. So I've made this observation about music festivals. When you're young, they are so exciting, but they're also really expensive, so it's hard to go to them. When you're older, you have a little bit more income maybe, but your desire to go to them goes down a bit. A lot of the artists cater to a younger crowd, you realize, and if you have kids, you have to think through babysitters and all that extra stuff, finding time off work. So really, it's like as your ability to go increases, your interest in going decreases. Sometime in your late 20s might be just that perfect happy point. And so last year we got to go to the High Water Festival, saw in Charleston, South Carolina, got to see Leon Bridges, The Head and the Heart, Dr. Dog, Warren Treaty, Lord Huron, so many others, such a great lineup, and just the perfect festival situation for what I was up for. I supported my wife through some big health scares. In particular, we had a nasty lung infection in early 2016. That was one of the least fun things I've ever had to do. But I can honestly say that I am proud of myself for hanging in there and for, continuing to show up. Okay, speaking of health scares, I'd have to say surviving a global pandemic, as we're trying to do right now, also goes on this list. I know it's super recent, super topical and timely, but if I'm making this list as a time capsule of sorts, then that's going to be a major historic event if I look back on this someday. So, COVID-19. Yeah. Dealt with that before turning 30. I started appreciating my older relatives, older family members, even older people I have in my life. I'm realizing I'm now in my adult phase, and that means all the people I used to think of as the adults are now seniors. And the time I have left with them is not infinite, and it's extra precious now. Now that we can both have conversations and see things as adults, I'm rediscovering people very close to me in new ways, and it's been valuable. Well, that's a lot. I've had it good. Look, life is beautiful. It can be really hard, but it can still be beautiful, and sometimes those things even go together. I am just so grateful, and it's a reminder that when I look back at my life in another 10 years, or if I make it to 50, 60, 90, that I want to be thankful for the choices I'm making right now, this week. So let's go do it. Time goes fast. There are some great ways to spend it.